So WAVE stands for Widening Access to Virtual Educational Scenarios. This is a 3-year project which was actually funded by the European Commission under the Erasmus Plus program, under the Knowledge Alliance section. And this brings together both business and higher educations together in the programs to actually deliver their expertise. So project partners. Terry's already mentioned this, but the main 6 project partners, St. George's being the lead in this project. Then we have Aristotle University. We have Karolinska Institutet from Sweden. We have Masaryk University from Czech Republic. And then we have 2 business partners, one being Instruct, who have developed a virtual patient authoring system called CASUS, and the other one being Bayer. And in addition to these 6 partners, we have associate partners related to this project. Now, not all of them are there, but it's just to give you an idea, there's a bigger group who are working on this project with us. So we interact with the associate partners to actually talk about the developments we've made in the project and actually get some of their feedback. But it doesn't stop there. We've got more people in this project. We've got the dissemination partners. Again, not all of them are up there, but we have dissemination partners who we actually feed our outputs to within the WAVES project. So we're all working together, and together we're all a network. And of course, this network is growing, as Terry mentioned. So why are we doing WAVES? There are many different ways of delivering scenario-based learning. You can see there's simulation, so pilot simulation, or you can deliver scenario-based learning by doing role-playing. Or there's more advanced ways of delivering scenario-based learning, and that's through online gaming and virtual worlds. But what we're concentrating on in the WAVES project is simple scenarios like this. Text, images, media, but all on one page. Very simple, making decisions or just going through a scenario in a linear fashion. But there's always a challenge when you're trying to deliver these virtual scenarios. One of the challenges, there are different types. How do you know which type to use for what? There's an art to authoring, as JB mentioned earlier. How do you know how to author these scenarios? There's loads of software out there. Some require quite a large amount of money to implement. Some require you to have technical knowledge to actually put onto your servers. And again, as mentioned earlier, storytelling is a really big part of scenario-based learning. You need to be able to tell the story, but also it's important to understand the cognition behind making those decisions as well. And that's a challenge. And then how do you use these virtual scenarios? Where do you use them? How are you going to deliver them to your learners, to your employees? And so the WAVES project is trying to get those ideas and put in some good practice and share that with everyone. So the main aims of the project is to take scenario-based learning out of the box and combine the academia expertise and the business expertise together to actually deliver that to the wider community. So we're promoting a new way or a new method of teaching and learning, and we're sharing the knowledge on how you might author these virtual scenarios and how you might use them as well. And this is done with, by providing some exemplars as well. And also, we're trying to target other groups. So a lot of our work has been done on just using virtual scenarios for virtual patients. But we know that scenario-based learning can be used in a wider community. So other disciplines can actually use them as well. So how do we start? So we started by actually doing a needs analysis, and this was done through different methods. We did a questionnaire, which was sent out online. We did a couple of focus groups, and we did a couple of one-to-one interviews as well. And from all the information we gathered there were some key findings. There was still a need to disseminate how virtual scenarios can be used, and how MOOCs can be used, and why they are needed, and how you might author them. Providing guidelines on this, there was still a need for that. And also people were looking for those quick off-the-shelf products that they can use in their own organizations rather than having to think about all the technical things. So with the needs analysis, we got some end-user stories. So our end users were learners, educators, and also technologists. And here are some of the quotes that we got from the learners. They wanted realistic scenarios, something that will prepare them for the workplaces they're about to go in. But they also wanted to be able to learn from the consequences of the decisions they're making in these virtual scenarios. And educators. Here are some comments from the educators. Educators, again, wanted their scenarios to be realistic, so very similar to what the students wanted. But they wanted them to be accessible, so not only via online laptops or desktops, they also wanted them available on tablets and mobile phones as well. But they wanted to get rid of the technical barrier, so they wanted to implement these virtual scenarios on their learning platforms that students already, or their learners already had access to. So we took all that information, and here are some of the outputs that we've created as part of the WAVES project. We've created a toolkit which is open for anyone in the community to use. And in addition to this, there's the network. And we keep going on about this network, but we're really wanting to build this network and share the knowledge. So I'm going to go into these two in a bit more detail. So the toolkit is built up of a lot of elements. And as you can see, we've got things in there like scenario-based learning, how you use them, authoring tips, exemplar scenarios, so you can actually see what capabilities scenarios have. You've got things like mobile platforms, so that these scenarios can be played on mobiles. We've got exemplar implementation, so you can copy what we've done in our project with different systems to actually implement the virtual scenarios on your own learning management systems. And then there's a lot more technical things like XAPI and LTI integration. And then we've also got things like languages. So we're trying to develop some of these guides in different languages to help people, and we want to make it more accessible. So this toolkit is divided into two sections. We've got a technical toolkit and a knowledge toolkit. So if I go into the technical toolkit, you can see we're delivering installation guidelines, how you might install one of these virtual scenario systems and maintain it. The two exemplar scenario systems that we're using in WAVES are both OpenLabyrinth and Casas. We're also showing how you can implement these, and we're sharing those guidelines. But we also have a GitHub repository so that people can actually get the codes and do these things themselves as well, along with the guidelines to follow with them. So there's things like guided tours to learn about how you use the different interfaces. There's the mobile player, as I've mentioned. You can see the visual pathways that students or learners have taken through a scenario once they've finished. And also the translation tools as well, so you can translate the interface to make it easier for your clinicians or your educators to use the systems. So the other side of the toolkit is the knowledge toolkit, and part of the knowledge toolkit we're giving the exemplar scenarios, so you can actually see the different types of scenarios that you can use. It may be a decision scenario where you've got multiple branches. It may be a linear scenario where you're looking at just asking the questions to your learners. Or it may be even online gaming type scenarios as well. And you can see some screenshots there of some of our exemplar scenarios. And these are not only in medicine. We've tried to put them in different disciplines as well. Again, in the toolkit, you also have training videos. So training videos that will tell you how you might author one of these virtual scenarios, giving you tips on what you should think about when authoring these scenarios, and also just how you might use it in different learning styles, in groups, for individuals. And this is attached with some guidelines as well. So again, you've got hard guidelines on using tips to author your virtual scenario, how you are using them, and also some simple solutions. So if you don't want to invest in some of the high-end or technically challenged software, we've got some simple tools to help you start off before you invest in one of those. Now, one of the other things as part of the knowledge toolkit, and that brings both the technical and the knowledge toolkit together, is the MOOC. Now, the MOOC is already run once, and the second run is starts on Monday. This is a freely available MOOC, which is available to anyone to enroll on and take part on. It's a 3-week MOOC, and it's delivered on a system called FutureLearn. So let's go through the MOOC. The MOOC, as I said, is 3 weeks. The first week, you get an introduction into scenario-based learning, so the generic concept of scenario-based learning, the importance of storytelling and cognition within decision-making, and also the importance of story to help you remember the scenario. Week 2 goes on to talking about specifics on virtual scenarios and how you might begin to plan to make one. So that's talking about creating objectives, thinking about how your learners are going to use it. All of that needs to be considered before you create one. And then the final week of the MOOC goes on to talk about virtual scenario technologies. There are loads of technologies out there, so we're trying to concentrate on a few that you might want to look at and you may want to try out for yourself. But also, again, you've got the simple solutions in there as well, so you don't have to invest in a lot. And then that goes on to talking about the tips and what tips you can use when you're creating these. So as you can see, it's put all our toolkit into one, so you can get everything from our toolkit into this one MOOC, and it can really help you. But you're not doing it alone, you're doing it with a community of people who are really interested in scenario-based learning. And you can have conversations and interact with one another during doing this MOOC. And you just end the MOOC by actually creating your first virtual scenario cells as well, which is fantastic. So in addition to all of this, as I said, one of the other main outputs of WAVES is the network. And as Terry mentioned earlier, you've got different projects who are bringing together their expertise, their outcomes, their findings from their own project, and bringing it together in this network so that we can share that knowledge and use that knowledge to help one another. And through this network, we've delivered a number of events and webinars. So the first event was actually in 2016, again, held in London. And that was to introduce the WAVES concept, but also bring together their network. That was followed by a couple of webinars that took place. And that was to help people learn about virtual scenarios, how you may author them, and introduce the concept. And then finally, we're here today for our second face-to-face event for this network. So we encourage you to stay part of this network, share your knowledge, and actually help us to help you, and vice versa. Because if the more we share, the more we can learn from one another, and there may be new collaborations from this. So we welcome you all to the WAVES network.